Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir El-Azzouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today I will help you to set up your eQMS. He's not only me. I have with me Jacob Sjorslev from SimplerQMS. He's the CEO of SimplerQMS and is located in Denmark. And he will help us to implement an eQMS. So Jacob, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thank you so much, Munir, and thank you for inviting me to this podcast. We've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, great. So thank you for that. So just for the audience, we decided to make 2 episodes with Jacob because the discussion I had with him was really interesting, and he started to explain to me the different activities that need to be done for the implementation of an eQMS, so electronic quality management system. And then we had a small discussion about validation. I said, maybe we should do then 2 episodes, one about the implementation and one about the validation. So you are lucky because you'll have then 2 episodes with Jacob, one this week and one next week, where we'll really help you to set up a quality management system, an electronic quality management system, and then also to validate it. So Jacob, just before to start, can you just introduce yourself to the audience and then we can really go through the questions?
Of course. Thank you. Originally, I have been the vice president of IT for a medical device company. I worked there for 20 years. One of the gains and experiences that I learned from there, it was very easy to implement an IT system. But to get the regulatory compliance with the IT system and to ensure that the records that was in there with those IT systems that we implemented, that they could be accepted by regulatory authorities was a big challenge.
Okay.
And I think I took the experience out that this is something that a lot of companies actually needs. And I also think that what I have learned is that many companies out there, they are struggling on how to actually do this. And I see many examples that people have invested in IT tools, but when they get audited, they bring out the papers. So that is the problem today.
Okay. And so you created then this company, so SimplerQMS.
Yes.
I think you didn't find the right solution for you on the field, so you said, why not building it directly? And we will really talk about that at the end of the episode, just to explain a bit more about your solution and how this helps medical device manufacturers and maybe accelerate also the implementation of the quality management system or quality management certification. So, Jacob, just maybe then to start on the episode and really to explain to the people the implementation of an eQMS. So, maybe just the first question before. So, we talk about eQMS. What do you see as the different solution for a company? There is eQMS, and what is the other solution for them?
You can say that when you look upon the standard, the ISO 13485, all the processes that are explained in there, if you are putting that into an electronic system, then you're actually starting to build a eQMS. So it is actually when you start touching this area, the first thing you actually need to understand is this a regulated process or not? There are many processes out there where you are using an IT system where you don't have to do validation because there's no regulatory requirements. But if you go into the process with electronic document management, if you are using the system for complaints or anything like that, at that point of time, you're actually starting to build a eQMS.
So it's really using a software, if I can say. It's really using a digital tool to record all your information and to help you, if I can say, to manage them. But I think before that, we had really just paper, if I can say. So it's really the solution that was only existing.
Yeah. So you can say today, if you are just on paper, then what is the process to try to get that into system. And here, I think we always try to explain that when you want to apply an IT system for this area, you should try to start with a small project.
Okay.
And one of the things that you need to understand is that the risk is actually that many companies will try to implement a project that is actually too big. It will be too expensive, it will be too risky, it will take too much time, and many people in the process will actually stop the project and they will never get completed. So actually the first phase that you actually need to establish is how can you establish a software where you can have electronic records and where you can have electronic approvals. That is the first project that you have to do, and for many companies that sounds like a small project, which is good because the risk is small and the time frame for actually doing this is also short, which is what we're looking for.
But when you are saying something like not starting with a big project, so
yes.
What I'm seeing now, when I'm seeing an eQMS, I see the part related to doc control, the part related maybe to CAPA system, the part related to training, the part related to design, the part related to compliance, etc., etc. There is so many blocks, if I can say, on the kind of eQMS.
You're absolutely right.
Are you talking about specifically, for example, starting just with a doc control project and then making a second wave to include a CAPA system and the third wave to include the compliance, etc., etc.? Is it what you are mentioning here?
That's exactly what I'm actually mentioning. So kind of the first phase is actually because when you are going from the system you have today or the process or the paper that you have today, there are some adjustments you actually need to make in the procedures that you already have in place. So any company that has been in this industry for some kind of time, they will have a procedure for the document control. So when you are implementing a process that will be supported by an electronic tool, there are changes that you need to implement into this procedure. And that is actually one of the first things that you need to change. And another thing is also that you have what's very important in the first phase is that you have a procedure for identity management.
Okay.
Who are the people that you will verify the identity of the people, that you actually have a contract where people sign that when they are using the system that they know about the rules, and they also understand that when they are applying the electronic approval inside of the system, it is equivalent with the handwritten signature.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is a very good start to get that implemented. What you're also mentioning here is that most people and most of these companies will have the ambition to include all of the design control documentation that they have. Yeah. And I see many that where they will try to collect all the history, get all their files, and put everything in as the first project. This will often fail because in the process they will see that they both have to change processes. They also have to take all their documentation, which is the foundation of their company, to put it into a new system that they don't totally understand yet. So the first phase is to build the smallest project with the biggest impact and the smallest risk. Because when you have established this first phase and people understand this, and you have some information in there that the company will consider as low risk, then to put the next topic on there is much easier, because the company and the people that has taken the training that are using the system for a small area, they can suddenly see the consequences on the biggest, on the more intensive documentation that they will be included in the second phase.
Okay, so I think it's really important here. So your advice when we are setting up an eQMS is mainly to first start with a small project. And mainly the idea is to start with a small project that people start to getting used to the software, start to get used to start to put documents inside, to understand digital signature, to understand the workflow, to understand all what is needed to be done with the software. It's like a pilot project, if I can say, for integrating the new software. And then after that, we start to put another layer or another step on the project with another block, if I can say, to include.
Yes.
But when we are kind of including an eQMS, so there is those different phases. So as soon as you finalize the first one, you have the training of the people, you have kind of a good understanding of the eQMS. So what do you think can be the next phase or the next step that they have to do?
The advice after the first phase is kind of that you go for every documentation you have on design control. Kind of the very vital files for the product that goes into what the actual intention of the companies that are implementing these of the systems, what they actually started the company for.
Okay.
And it's normally a huge collection of documents, even though that it's a smaller company. This industry, it dictates that you document everything, you have records for everything. So the history, it becomes big. So it's kind of ensuring that the design history file, it can go in there. And you also have to design a migration project in order to define what are the records that we need in there and how are we going to get it in there. And it is not always a very easy exercise, because what happens over time is that you have working files that's typically the last version of the copy of the document that you've been working on right now, but you have made many, many versions over time. And it's kind of trying to identify what is the last version of the document. And that is, for some companies, not always very easy.
Okay, so I think it's this advice can be really understandable by everybody, because as you mentioned, those documents, the design files, the DHF, the technical files, etc., are really the basis of the company, and we start to link with all the other blocks that will arrive after that. We will link to those files, because at the end we are selling those products, so we have really to understand the source files. Okay, so design, I think, makes sense. What is next for you?
It's a little bit related to what is very important to companies, but one of the other topics we have the qualification of suppliers, the qualification of equipment. There's many regulations regarding suppliers, having a process for qualifying them, building a collection of all the documents that you have around those, coming into production equipment, being able to identify what is kind of a standard equipment and what are the equipment that needs calibration, and establishing process so that there are tasks that are created that tells the company what to do at a given point of time. So that's kind of important. Some more of the next other of the next topics is, just like you mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, is also the post-market surveillance tools.
Okay.
So you got audits, you got the NCRs, you got the CAPAs, you got the complaints, and this is especially if you're establishing this as a younger company, then these kind of processes are mostly for people that has a product on the market. We also talk with many startups that are still in the process of actually establishing their first product, and in those cases the post-market surveillance tools are actually more important in a later phase.
Yeah.
Just one comment is that the second you have established your QMS system with the procedures and the SOPs and so on, you also need an NCR to capture if you have any NCRs on the procedures. But for complaints and so on, that is for established companies that has a product on the market.
So I think it's a clear point here is about a difference between companies that are really starting to implement an eQMS and companies that already have a quality management system, maybe in another software, and they want to migrate to a new one, or in paper and want to migrate to an eQMS. Then here is really a distinction. Maybe for the new companies is really to follow the flow of manufacturing of a product or development, then manufacturing, then putting on the market, then receiving maybe some complaints, which is then easy for them to make the different phases. And for a company that is already established, it is mainly to try to transfer the data from one software to another, or maybe to make a clear cut and say, from today, we will just use this software, and all what was done on the other previous one, we continue to close that there, but we are really from now using this software for any new CAPA or any new complaint or any new things.
It's you're talking about kind of the cutover plan. That's kind of the last thing you do when you kind of close down the old process and you start up on the new process. From my experience, it's very difficult for companies to do totally without history, but you're totally right that trying to migrate all history into this kind of system, it wouldn't make sense. It will just be a big mess, actually. Yeah. So also when you design these phases, try to look for processes that are repeated often. It is here that you need to start, because where you have the repetition of something you're doing over and over again, it is really here where you can actually, where you should start. If you only have a process for kind of the suppliers where you only have 2 suppliers and you don't really have a lot of that, then that shouldn't be the kind of starting point.
Exactly. In terms also of, there is the phase where you are, I mean, for a new company, there is the phase, for example, where they are starting to do the design, starting to build, if I can say, their quality management system, but also their products. At this stage, for new companies, maybe they are still not ISO 13485 certified. They are just starting to implement that. But they can, if I can say, be ISO 13485 certified as soon as they have in place all the different modules that are required by this ISO. So it's something that will take maybe some time, but also something that will help the companies to learn their software, learn their products. And at the end, I think you have also to show or to prove to a certification body that you are using it and that you have also some evidence that the system is working completely.
That's true, but I also think that what you're also talking about here is timing about when you want to go to an electronic system, because I don't think that a very young company that started yesterday should actually start this as kind of the first thing. I think that establishing your key hardcore procedures on paper is actually a good starting point, but it's kind of, you have to be very careful that you don't wait too long, because at some point of time, just handling versioning of different the different documents, it will get complicated, it will get time consuming, and you will also kind of risk that you will not be able to identify always what is the latest version of a document.
So what is for you at that point, what is for you a kind of a good identification of the right time to move from paper to eQMS? Is there really like a trigger that says now we have to do it, or now it's really the right time, or is there a phase during the development of your products, or is to say now it's the right time to move to an eQMS?
I think that the second that you have kind of the basic procedures that you need for the QMS, at that point of time you can actually see if you have the time for making the journey, but also understand that if you do the journey at an earlier phase, the time for making the journey is actually shorter.
Okay.
If you have a lot of history, a lot of established way of doing things, then actually making the journey from what you have established into something that might be a little bit different, it will be harder.
Okay. And so now we have established all the audit modules, NCR, CAPA, compliance, etc. All those modules and what is the next step for this company? Now they have that and they are using that. So what's for you the next step?
Two areas that I see. One is regarding the management of the risk. I think it's very important that you have tools for that. But also one thing, and I think this is something that is overseen in many systems, is that you actually have records that you are creating. You have many of them that are related to the product. It can be purchase orders, it can be incoming inspection, it can be the goods receiving, it can be the manufacturing order. All of these records are related to the product. You have many of them. And if you first establish them on paper, you will have you will have a hard time later if you want to make that electronic. So it's kind of understanding that many companies actually have many of those, and especially also if you're working in different locations, if you might have outsourced some of the procedures to a company outside of your organization, then how do you actually make a repository where you can capture all these records so you have them all together? And if you have local paper archives, then there's a risk that they will stay in paper archives kind of forever.
Okay, yeah. So I think one of the things that is also interesting with eQMS is that you can really have them or the document placed at the right place, if I can say, when you are looking for them, you can make a quick search and you find them easily. And it helps me a lot during audits because when the auditor are asking me to provide them the DHR or the manufacturing orders for certain products, and it was done 2 years ago. Before I have done the deep dive or the digging in the archive room, it was really a nightmare.
Yeah.
And the other one is really with the eQMS when it was really quick because I find directly the copies that I need and I can show that to the auditor. So which is also one of the advantage of having a good recording system with an eQMS.
Yeah.
Okay, Jacob. So is there something else related to this topic?
No, I think we're pretty much there. But I think what I would like to emphasize as the last thing here is that you have to focus on the processes that are very important for you and the ones that you do all the time. If you start with those, you are probably starting on something that will create a lot of value for you, and it will also be something that the people will be using all the time because it is a constant process.
Okay, so I think it's really I mean the phases or the project that you just defined for the implementation of an eQMS makes really sense, and I hope that some people will think about it when they will start this kind of project and not think to really start as a big project, but really make it as small waves so that their people are really used to that. And as Jacob said also, if you are really starting from the beginning, maybe just start with a simpler paper-based QMS for the first procedures, and then you can move to an eQMS a bit later, but don't wait too long. Jacob, so as we mentioned at the beginning, so you are also working, so you have created SimplerQMS, which is an eQMS.
Yes.
So can you tell us more about this tool and also about what you think are really the advantages of using that kind of system for the medical device manufacturers?
Yeah, I can try also to tell a little bit about why we actually started this, because it was based out of the wishes I had. When I started out in this industry, I was just like the customers I have today. I was trying to struggle, trying to find out how I can actually implement this kind of system. And I see that you needed a big investment all the companies out there, they want to make a large consultancy task around this and build everything from scratch. So what we are actually proposing here is that we made the user requirements based on the regulations. All the regulatory requirements from the American standards, from the European standards, we make them as our user requirements. And one of the things that I think is good with all the regulation, which I maybe in the beginning thought was hard, is that it gives you very precise advice on how you need to design this. And it also means that the freedom to operate, to make your own choices inside of the systems is actually more limited. So one of the problems when I was the VP of IT was that I often came in where people said, well, we want a standard solution, but in the second conversation, they came with all these kind of very specific needs that was not standard.
Okay.
So what we are proposing here is we use the regulation to make our user requirement specification. And we took all of the requirements to put it into a solution that is pre-configured, it's pre-documented. We have the key procedures that goes around it. We have the instructions for the user training. We have all the test protocols that goes into this that can be used for the testing, and we have people that can hold the customer's hand so that they don't have to invent everything. So my idea is to use the regulation and kind of just like if you see a cooking class on TV where everything is kind of prepared, that is what we are trying to do. We can prepare everything so that we can try to make a solution that is just aligned with the processes and that the company want to implement, and the customer can focus on mainly two things: building their competences, which is number one. That is actually the secret of a good project. If the company that goes live on a new system, if the local people have total competence on the system, everything will go very smooth. So people participate in training and people participate in testing and then go live. That's it. No going into a classroom on a blank piece of paper, describing all the processes, writing all the specifications. We did all that. So it's kind of looking at the QMS as when you come to our company is that we have all the requirements in there. You have to pick the pieces that will make sense for you. When you pick the pieces, then you also pick the part of the documentation, the test protocols, the instructions that you are going to be trained in. And we can build something where we will have a system that will be ready very, very soon for you. It's built in the cloud. We have capacity for 2 users or 1,000 users. It doesn't really matter. And we can take your hand and in a month establish the first version of the eQMS that you're actually looking for.
No, it's
and that will give you that will give you a good starting point.
Yeah.
So there's no big upfront investment. There's not a lot of classroom designing of processes, which consultants are very happy to do. But we have something that you specify your needs, we scope your project, we do it, we train you, and we go live.
Okay, so I think as you mentioned, one of the good points here is the fact that you are really specific to the healthcare business or to the medical device business. So you are really translating the regulation to what is happening on your software. I suppose that if there is a change in the regulation, you are also updating that or making some version, because as we mentioned, so it's a software that is on the cloud or is available to be used from each company, but it's really based on your servers. So the idea is then that each time there is a change, you can manage this change, manage the updates, and provide to the customer something that is really each time up to date.
Yeah, and I think also here that you're touching something. It's important to say that it is not on our server, on some local server that's stationed here in DK. It's we are working with Microsoft Azure, which means that capacity and local presence in every kind of market and region of the world is actually out there. They are very specialized in this, So kind of everything is in place there.
Okay. So it's and in terms of validation, which is the next topic of the next episode, we will talk mainly about that, about how to validate an eQMS. But here you are also taking in charge or taking care about all the validation of the eQMS.
That's correct. And I think it's important to say also when you mentioned about updates and so on, because in the validation, and I might be touching a little bit on the next topic, but in the old days, you did the validation and then you tried to keep your environment stable, because kind of taking care of changes and revalidating was something you only did if you had a gun to your head almost. So what we're actually embracing here is that we say change is good, and it's very important that whatever updates you have for correcting defects to closing the gaps regarding the security, that you actually implement these changes. And that actually means that we do updates every single month, and we do validation every single month.
Okay.
So we have change control process that's kind of running all the time, and where we also ensuring that the latest of the fixes and the defects are actually implemented all the time.
So great. So also I mentioned that you also prepared for the audience kind of some documents to help them really to understand this topic of eQMS implementation. And next week you will have also the documents for the eQMS validation. And you said to me that you also want to make a kind of an offer for the people. So what it is exactly?
Yeah, you can say that first of all we have this checklist. For establishing an eQMS, you can download that after this introduction. And the second thing is also what we're offering is actually that the 21st customers that gets in contact with us, we're offering them a free workshop where we will try to see if we can scope a project that would make sense for them to make the first steps into an eQMS.
Okay. So, and for that, there will be kind of just an email to send to you, and just yes. To mention that you are coming from Easy Medical Device, and then it will be kind of the sesame for you to get this free eQMS checklist, and also to get 1 hour with you to really have to set up, if I can say, a project. So I think that's a great gift for the people. So thank you for that. And I will also put that on the show notes. But just for people, where can they find you? So I suppose you are on LinkedIn, but they can also find you on your website.
Yeah, we are on SimplerQMS.com. So we have a website there that explains a lot. We're also in the process of building our own of the YouTube channel, and we're also on LinkedIn.
Great. So if you are making this YouTube channel, I will link to you just to see what you are doing. And I think, this topic is really interesting because eQMS is something that a lot of people are looking for now, and they need a lot of information of it. So I think it's really great to have that. So for everybody on the audience, so thank you for really your time. I hope that you like all those episodes that I'm making with the podcast, with also the YouTube channel. So thank you also because we reached the 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So thank you for that. And also, if you are really liking what I am doing, so it would be great that you subscribe, that you also like all the videos or all the podcasts. And if you can also provide some reviews on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify, etc., could be really interesting for me. And something else, if you have a Google Home or an Alexa, please try it for me. Just say, I want to listen to the Medical Device podcast, and let me know if it's really working, if my podcast or the last episode is really popping up from your audio device. Okay, so Jacob, we will meet each other again next week regarding the eQMS validation. But now I wish you a nice day.
Thank you. Take care.